Why, Ian? Why? You've come out again today and said things that is going to make you a lot more enemies in those criminal syndicates that you named, the ANC and SAPS. Why?
Well, it's nothing I haven't said before. It might be viewed again, but you know what I think? I actually wrote it down. I didn't say it, that if more people speak, less of us would be at risk. If everyone here would start speaking up, are they going to arrest all of us? I think not. And that's what I mean by big corporate as well. You know, BE and the charity, the corporate social responsibility stuff, the points that you need to score is so important because it affects the CEO's pocket. But if all those businesses said, stuff the policy, I'm not going to do it anymore, what are they going to do? Arrest all the CEOs? They can't. They can't. What happened with e-toll? Exactly the same thing. There's a way that we can change the narrative. So maybe people say what I said is reckless. I stand to be corrected by what I say. I honestly do believe it. I want to support what Herman said today about the criminality in that party. Parts of what James said. I honestly believe, and obviously Rob, he's got a way with words, but that party is beyond repair. You cannot think that a roundtable discussion with CEOs that aren't getting down and dirty is going to change the narrative.
The Zondo Commission has laid it all out, so there's no real mystery in that. But to see the blatancy of what happened yesterday, while you were standing, as you say, looking out on the ocean, and 20 cars just poaching in broad daylight, shows you how far the problem has gone. Maybe you could just share a little bit with us more about the blue light story, and particularly what did the guy do to get pulled over like that? What are the police saying that he did? Did he show a finger to the blue light mafia, as you call them? Was there anything that would have initiated that?
So to be honest, I actually don't know what they did. I've asked this question. I actually spoke to one of the victims again yesterday morning, and they have continually said they thought they were being hijacked because there weren't any sirens on at the moment when it happened. And the first vehicle came from the side, so they couldn't see any blue lights, and they were pointed with a rifle. And when you drive a Polo and someone points something at you, especially when it's a big black SUV, if you drive a Polo, a Hilux, or a Ford, there's a good chance you're being hijacked, right? And the next moment, another vehicle pulls up in front and pushes them off. I see one of the cops with a bail hearing said that apparently they were drunk. I don't know. I don't know how they would.
Who was drunk? The cops were drunk.
No. The victim.
But it like seems so terribly random. You're driving along one day and then you get hit with a rifle butt.
Devil's advocate. Let's say they were. Let's say they really did do something wrong. Now, first of all, they say it was a threat to the convoy. Now, who in their right mind, unarmed, in a little blue Polo, okay, would pose a threat to 7 blue light vehicles, and I think there were 2 JMPD marked vehicles, part of the bigger convoy. I don't know. It sounds like a story from Ramadi. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And when you meet the victims, you don't get the impression of, I can't even say that it's like big, strong guys that look like they would pose a threat to someone. And I guess you should never underestimate anyone, but there's nothing intimidating about them. So I don't get it. I honestly don't have the answer yet. Regardless, nothing can justify the way they behave themselves.
Why were they allowed to wear masks in court?
So the magistrate said that once it gets to trial, they'd have to be unmasked, but it was to protect their identity were they to get bail, as I understand. But I just think it's such a blatant double standard. So they can beat you to pulp, while you're unconscious. By the way, if you keep kicking someone when you see they're already unconscious, isn't that attempted murder? I mean, but anyway, that's a discussion for another day. So it just feels like a double standard. The other interesting part, Alec, is that so this magistrate keeps on saying that the state has a weak case, or that's what she said last week. But you know what's so interesting about it is that one of the idiocy of one of the cops, when he spoke at the beginning of the bail application, he already admitted to being at the scene. So boom, they've already been connected themselves to the scene. They've linked themselves to the scene, regardless of everything else. Now we know there's sunrail footage. I haven't seen it. That comes from the gantry. But I don't understand how it's a weak case. Now the interesting thing is their commander also knew about the incident on the same day, and that commander never reported it. And according to me, the deputy president also knew, but obviously wouldn't do anything. And the track record speaks for itself. But just in terms of the police, you would think if you had a debrief, something like this would have been reported.
There are lots of stories about what happened in New York City when there was rampant crime, and the police commissioner introduced the broken window syndrome. In other words, starting at a very low level. Is that something that could be replicated here in South Africa?
So absolutely. I think Hermanus has actually done it very well. Started a few years ago with the way they did the municipal court. If you were caught urinating next to the road, you'd be fined, and there's a whole bylaw process that would be followed because there are adequate toilet facilities. There's no need for you to show everything to everyone driving past and then make it smell horrible. So I think it can work, but it has to be in conjunction with the police. Now, when New York's mayor, Rudolph Giuliani, implemented the broken window principle, they went as strict as saying that if you were to throw a piece of gum on the just on the road or something, you could be fined for that. And I love that. I think it can work. But, and there's a but, that our cops themselves don't behave themselves the right way. How many times have I seen them do little things? And it's not because some of them are bad. It's because it's the example. It's the precedent that is set by their leaders. One day, I'll tell you a short story. At police head office, we had a meeting with Ria Piecha when she was the national commissioner. And her motorcade came driving in, and there was one cop literally tasked with carrying her purse. And it said it all. It said to me, there's this dictator kind of, you know what I mean.
Mm. You spoke about a skills audit, and you have said that before. Just again for context, how many generals are there in the South African police force, and how many of those would pass a skills audit?
How many of them would pass? I don't have the answer, but from last figures I saw, we've got about a total of 600 brigadiers and generals altogether in the country. Way too much. Way too many chiefs, too little Indians. And I think if a large amount of those, I know for a fact, are political appointments. Just if you look at national commissioners, Ria Piecha, again, is a very good example. Remember, Ria gave herself a 10-year service medal, World Cup medal. She gave herself an amalgamation medal, and she didn't serve in any of those three. And there are many more examples of those. So yeah, it costs taxpayer, I think it's 2.2 billion a year to fund those brigadiers and generals. So
if I hear you correctly, if you are a good cadre in the ANC and you're loyal to the party and you kind of want a cushy job, you might get deployed as a general in the police services.
Oh yeah, have you seen how they eat at functions? It is magnificent. Like, it is a feast. There's this, and I know we're joking about it, but it really is. It's a matter of it's a literal feeding trough, if I may say that. And it's this thing where everything is just free. It's easy. It really astounds me. day before yesterday, I heard General Masemola saying that the police don't have the resources to fight zamazamas. It's a blatant lie. They do have the resources. They don't have the political will. We still have a relatively okay national intervention unit. We still have a relatively okay special task force. Nail these minds one by one. Bring back crime intelligence. Make sure that our forensic labs are sped up a little bit. They haven't bought rape DNA testing consumables for the last few months, and for the last 6 weeks, they haven't tested in biology labs with regards to DNA tests for 6 weeks. So the DNA backlog is loading again. So I think it's a good retirement plan. If you're a good cadre, be a general in SAPS.
Then surely you should also be pushing for a lifestyle or for lifestyle audits of these ANTs.
I think that's what hit General Paglane very, very, very hard. I think there were blatant signs of in Afrikaans, this net things are too good. It doesn't suit the salary that he would be getting. So with the skills audit, Alec, you would need a restructure. You would need to make sure that you have a police minister that actually sits in his office and does policy direction, strategic direction, and I guess a little bit of political influence, but I hate seeing that. And then you really need to try and de-unionize or have less unions in the police, because unions have literally numbed the police in parts.
So when you go into helping these most vulnerable in society, which is what you do, victims of violence, what do they think about the world around them when you meet with the families? I've heard it been saying many times that the ANC is like a soccer team. They may be not performing that well, but I'm not going to stop supporting West Ham and start supporting Arsenal. Is that what you're experiencing?
It changes from place to place. Look, in terms of, 80% of our test cases when we started with the oversight model of violence against women and children, of which the majority are very violent murder cases, if you speak to the families of those victims, they despise the ANC, they despise the government. But that being said, even though, and this is, I know it's not, it's like the lesser of two evils, even though it's a little bit better than what it might be in parts of Alex in Joburg. It's difficult to say that with parts of Kylie Changuguleta, but nevertheless, they despise government in general. There's this distrust with government. And to be honest, I don't blame them. Many times I had a issue the other day in Paul when we really wanted to do a function where we shared the stories of some of the victims in a positive sense to make people remember a beautiful little girl or a beautiful woman that something horrific happened to. And I'm not going to say names now because we've sorted it out, but so many senior officials didn't show up. They just didn't show up. And the answers were, there's a crime stats release, or there's this, I've got another meeting or a budget. And that's the thing, and that's what I love about what Jan said earlier. The human capital side is lost. There's no more compassion. Cops, if we start looking after our cops, Harare, for example, in the Cape Flats, I speak to some of the cops there weekly, and their generator doesn't work. So you're one of the most dangerous places in South Africa, and on a Friday evening, one of your busiest times on shift, you've got no power. It's dark. It's completely dark. And they just say, we didn't get fuel. So now if the cops don't pay for the fuel themselves, there's nothing. So imagine how exposed they feel.
It sounds a bit like what we heard earlier from Herman, that there are solutions, and a lot of them can be real basic stuff, just basic management. Is that the correct kind of conclusion?
Absolutely. I think there's basic maintenance issues. We can talk about that later. But if we have a few leaders, strong leaders with integrity, vision, otherwise people perish, and with a very simple, and I want to say not more than 5 priority focus areas in the criminal justice system, we're already going to make an impact. And if we integrate the police with the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, not necessarily integrate the entire departments. I'm talking about their strategy being synchronized. We can really, really turn the tables. It is not that difficult.
On the good news side, tell us a bit about LEAP, and here in Hermanus, HPP.
Yeah, so HPP, I haven't caught up with them recently, but when I did work with them several years ago, it was an initiative with the municipality, security companies, even neighborhood watches, parts of the community policing forum at that stage. And those are the types of civil society bodies that need to be worked on. But often we hear that people are tired of community politics, etc., and then they withdraw. And I'm not referring to HPP now, but in the general sense of these community safety initiatives. In terms of LEAP, which is the Law Enforcement Advancement Program, if you compare them to Panyasas, the Sufis, they call them the green beans in Alex, they're years apart. I mean, you can't, not that the new wardens in Gauteng are bad people. Some of them really want to make an impact. But I spoke to some of the cops in Bronkhorstspruit the other day, and they said to me, we've got these cops, these extra hands now, but they've got no training, they don't have gear, they don't have firearms, they're not trained, etc., etc. What I love about LEAP is that it really has become a force multiplier. I think the next positive step would be to somehow manage to give LEAP and Metro and provincial structures a little bit more investigative power, forensic capacity, because then we can go straight to court, and then we can start with the devolution side of court processes and so on. The visible side does help, and it is a good prevention matter. But organized crime, like gangsterism, for example, is such a big issue that many organized crime groups would hang back a little bit. They would see what is the way, the operating of the police or whoever the law enforcement authority is at that stage, and they would just change their modus operandi and carry on again. But LEAP is positive, and if we can do something like LEAP and join with private security, and more importantly, again, July 2021 riots, pull in well-trained communities, and I'm not talking about vigilante, I'm talking about real peace officers. But Taylor just won't sign it off. Many companies have even tried to do that with communities. He won't sign it off, but that's the direction we need to move in.